The problem with online safety has been going on for quite a few months now, starting with Nadine Dorris, and now moving on to the present government. And the new Online Safety Act falls short of guaranteeing the protection it purports to offer. Despite the government's assurances, this law, heralded as a milestone in regulating big tech, is riddled with flaws and contradictions that render it inadequate, a hopeless shield against the dangers of the digital age. The tragic case of Molly Russell, the 14-year-old who took her own life after being exposed to harmful online content, is a sobering reminder of the stakes involved. Molly's father, Ian Russell, recently said that the UK is going backwards on online safety, and his criticism is not an emotional outcry, but a reasoned assessment of a system that prioritises political optics over meaningful reform. The online safety is just flag waving. It was intended to impose a duty of care on tech giants, requiring them to remove illegal and harmful content and protect vulnerable users, especially children. But key elements of the legislation, particularly concerning legal but harmful content, were stripped out under pressure from free speech advocates within the Conservative Party. And while the law compels social media platforms to remove illegal content, such as child abuse material and posts inciting violence, it does little to address the more insidious legal but harmful content, such as material promoting eating disorders or self-harm. And this approach, while prompting freedom, while encouraging individual choice, neglects the problem of encouraging harm. Algorithms that amplify toxicity and platforms that profit from engagement in harmful material. And the problem, again, and I've spoken about this in the past with algorithms, is once you start watching something, that's all you watch. That's all you watch. And children are meant to be protected from such content. It's not the content we should be protecting people from. It's the way the algorithm gives the impression that is the world. The world you see is the world. It isn't. It isn't. There are people who hold different views. There are different ideas out there. But if you subscribe to one particular view enough, that's the algorithm then defined for you. That is all you see. And children are meant to be protected from this sort of content, but enforcement is reliant on vague promises of age assurance technologies which remain ill-defined and inconsistently applied, and they would not work anyway. That's the problem, because of the algorithm. This online safety bill is a solve for the government, for the authorities. It's not. It doesn't address the safety issues that are necessary to protect vulnerable individuals. It's about them, not about us. And tech giants like Meta and Twitter are retreating from active moderation in favour of laissez-faire models, such as Meta's community notes. Yeah, fine. The point is, the twits who began this program, people like Nadine Dorries, were focusing on the wrong thing. She didn't even know what an algorithm was. So this shift is worrying, and it undermines any semblance of proactive safeguarding, but the law itself doesn't focus on the real problem. The removal of legal but harmful provision, so what? Was a concession to critics like Kemi Badenoch and David Davis, who decried it as an affront to free speech. Badenoch dismissed the original proposals as legislating for hurt feelings, a phrase that, while rhetorically sharp, trivialises the real and measurable harm inflicted by online content that is harmful. And this ideological clash, balancing freedom of expression with the imperative to protect users, has left the legislation teetering between ineffectiveness and overreach. And as Science Secretary Peter Kyle notes, the result is an uneven, unsatisfactory settlement. Beyond its conceptual shortcomings, the Act lacks the agility to respond to the rapid evolution of digital platforms. And as Kyle himself says, relying on sweeping legislation every decade is a losing battle against technological innovation. Platforms are quick to adapt, often exploiting loopholes or delaying compliance while governments struggle to keep up. The Act also suffers from enforcement issues. While companies face the threat of strident sanctions, the resources and the expertise required to monitor compliance are non-existent. Furthermore, international platforms operating in the UK can easily sidestep accountability by exploiting jurisdictional ambiguities, by basing themselves in Ireland or in Greenland. The retreat from content moderation, exemplified by Meta's abandonment of fact-checkers in favour of user-generated notes, highlights another critical failing. The proliferation of misinformation, be it election interference, public health disinformation, or falsehoods, remains a potent threat. Last year's riots in the UK, sparked by a baseless claim involving a Taylor Swift dance class, underscores how quickly lies can metastasize online with devastating real-world consequences. But what I find so extraordinary is when there are people who were specifically named individuals who were fanning those flames, and yet we're still looking towards social media because that's an easy blame. Tech giants driven by profit motives, often pandering to political expediencies, are unlikely to self-regulate effectively. Ian Russell aptly describes this as a bonfire of safety measures that leaves vulnerable people exposed, and the government can say, well, we've done our best. Oh, yes, we've set up a law. The law is pointless. This law is a waste of time, of space, of paper. If the Online Safety Act is ever to be salvaged, it needs to evolve. First, the government needs to introduce and strengthen the legal but harmful provisions, at least for children. Second, the legislation should mandate algorithmic transparency, holding platforms accountable for the ways their systems promote harmful content. And third, a robust regulatory body with real teeth, not just Ofcom. Ofcom! If you don't want anything to happen, go to Ofcom. Something akin to, what we need is something akin to a digital safety commission, not something that is monitoring the media, staffed by people on sinecures. We need a proper regulatory body with meaningful enforcement. And finally, the government must adapt and adopt a more iterative approach to legislation, responding swiftly to new challenges rather than waiting for another decade-long overhaul. And it needs to put somebody with a mind in charge, rather than somebody who is just waiting for the next big job. The Minister for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. It's been a stepping stone to something else for too long. It's been a place to park somebody who's visible but pointless. As Peter Kyle himself has said, online safety laws should be updated regularly to match the pace of technological change, but they need to be done by somebody who's competent. The Online Safety Act in its current form is emblematic of a legislative compromise that pleases no one except for the legislators and protects few except for Parliament. As long as economic and political considerations outweigh the moral imperative to safeguard lives, we will continue to see tragedies like Molly Russell's. It's not enough to legislate with good intentions. We need to legislate effectively. And anything less is just a bad law. And actually, it's not just a bad law, it's a dangerous law. We now end up with the Online Safety Bill in much the same way as we do with the regulations about reality TV. Parliament has done its job. There's now something there. Oh, now any further changes are down to Ofcom. These two bits of legislation, the bit of legislation that led to the Online Safety Regulation Bill and the reality TV regulation, they're both the waste of time. But the damage that they do in giving the impression that this is a dealt with problem is astronomical. there will still be disasters, deaths, and the dangers of these systems is evident, and it's going to be very difficult to get your local MP to intercede to help. That doesn't happen now. You have to go through Ofcom. Ofcom.